The underground parking garage was dimly lit, the kind of place where silence pressed down like a heavy blanket, broken only by the occasional drip of water from some distant pipe and the echo of footsteps against the concrete floor. It was late, almost midnight, and most of the building's staff had long since gone home, but not her. Dressed in a faded yellow janitor's uniform, with her hair tied neatly back, Maya moved quietly between rows of cars, pushing her mop bucket like she had done countless nights before. To anyone who bothered to notice, she was just another invisible worker, someone who blended into the background, someone who cleaned up the messes that no one else cared about. But what no one realized, not the office workers who sneered at her during the day, not the building managers who tossed her meager paycheck across the counter, not even the security guards who rarely looked up from their phones, was that Maya's story ran far deeper than a mop and a bucket. Beneath that simple yellow uniform lived a woman forged in battle, hardened by fire, and trained to endure things that most men could not survive. She had a past, a hidden one, carved in deserts and jungles, in gunfire and blood. She had worn a uniform once. Too, not of polyester and cheap fabric, but of iron and pride. A uniform that demanded courage, discipline, and sacrifice. She had been a soldier, a protector, and she had seen things that would haunt ordinary people for lifetimes. Yet here she was now, mopping floors, unseen, unvalued. Some nights she almost laughed at the irony of it all. Though tonight there would be no laughter. Tonight, fate was about to test her again. From the far corner of the garage, the sound of polished shoes echoed louder and louder. A group of men in suits walked in, their voices bouncing sharply against the cold concrete walls. They were laughing, the loud, arrogant laughter of men who believed the world existed to serve them. At their center was Victor Crane, a man whose face appeared on magazine covers, on news channels, and on business reports. He was the kind of man who measured his life in millions, who believed power was his birthright. With his slicked-back hair, his custom-tailored navy suit, and his gold watch that gleamed even under the dim garage lights, Victor didn't walk so much as he owned every step he took. His companions, bodyguards, assistants, yes-men trailed behind him, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, nodding at every careless word he spat, feeding his ego like vultures circling a lion. Victor had been celebrating another ruthless business victory. Another competitor crushed, another empire expanded, and in his intoxicated arrogance, he was searching for one last outlet for his inflated pride. That's when his sharp eyes fell on Maya. At first he didn't see her as a person. She wasn't Maya to him. She wasn't a woman who had spent years serving her country. She wasn't someone with scars hidden beneath her uniform that told tales of battles fought and survived. To Victor, she was just the janitor. Just another lowly figure pushing a bucket, someone beneath his notice, someone to mock, someone to remind of their place in the hierarchy he believed he ruled. Well, what do we have here? Victor's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. His men chuckled behind him, leaning against nearby cars, eager to watch whatever performance their leader was about to stage. Maya paused, her hands resting lightly on the mop handle. She didn't look up right away. She didn't need to. She had encountered his type countless times before, in boardrooms, in back alleys overseas, in interrogation rooms where power was always a weapon. She knew the sound of arrogance, the tone of someone who thought they owned you. Slowly she lifted her gaze, her eyes calm and steady, locking onto his. Victor smirked, clearly amused by her lack of fear. He stepped closer, the click of his shoes ringing louder now. "Tell me," he said, tilting his head, "do they pay you enough to clean up after men like me?" His voice dripped with disdain, each word designed to wound, to remind her of where society believed she belonged. Maya said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was often stronger than words, that stillness could be more intimidating than shouting. But Victor was not a man accustomed to silence. To him, her lack of response was an insult. He reached out suddenly, his hand shooting forward like a viper, gripping her throat with his polished fingers. Gasps and laughter erupted from his companions. "Nobody's coming to save you," Victor hissed, his eyes narrowing, his grip tightening. He expected fear, panic, the trembling of someone who realized their helplessness. But Maya did not tremble. Her eyes didn't waver. Her breathing didn't hitch. Instead, she looked at him the way a soldier looks at an opponent, calm, analytical, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Her voice, when it finally came, was steady, quiet, almost amused. "Funny," she said, her lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile. "It's you who need saving right now." For the first time that night, Victor's confidence faltered. Something in her eyes, a depth, a steadiness, a fire that did not belong to a simple janitor, made him hesitate. His grip loosened ever so slightly, confusion flickering across his face. Behind him, his men laughed nervously, unsure if their leader was still in control of the game. But Maya knew control had already shifted. She remembered her training, the countless drills, the endless hours of combat practice. In one smooth motion, quicker than Victor could register, she twisted her body, breaking free from his hold. Before his men could react, her hand snapped to his wrist, twisting it back with practiced precision until he cried out in pain, the arrogance in his voice replaced by shock. The sound echoed through the garage, silencing his companions instantly. They stared in disbelief, their mouths open, their laughter gone. Maya didn't release him immediately. She leaned in close, her voice low enough for only him to hear, yet strong enough to carry a weight heavier than any shout. "You think power is money," she whispered. "But real power is what you do when someone tries to break you." With a final twist, she shoved him back, releasing his wrist. He stumbled, nearly tripping over his expensive shoes, his face red with fury and humiliation. Victor's men stepped forward, uncertain, caught between loyalty to their employer and the sheer intimidation radiating from this woman, who had just dismantled him without breaking a sweat. Maya didn't wait for them to act. She straightened her uniform, picked up her mop as though nothing had happened, and calmly began to walk toward the exit. Each step echoed louder than Victor's laughter had only moments before. Each step reminded him, and everyone watching, that appearances were deceiving. That strength wasn't always found in the loudest man in the room, but sometimes in the quietest. Victor clutched his wrist, glaring after her, his pride burning hotter than the pain. "You'll regret this," he spat, but the threat sounded hollow, empty. Deep down, even he knew that something had just shifted. The balance of power had tipped, and for the first time, he had met someone he couldn't buy, couldn't bully, couldn't intimidate. And as Maya's figure disappeared into the shadows of the garage, one truth lingered in the silence. She was no ordinary janitor. She was something far more dangerous. And Victor Crane, the millionaire who believed the world bent to his will, had just awakened a storm he could not control. The night after the confrontation, the city seemed quieter, but for Maya, silence was never just silence. It was layered with memory, shadows of the past bleeding into the present. She sat in her small apartment, the kind of place most people would overlook, just as easily as they overlooked her uniform. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, and the only decoration was a framed photo on her nightstand, a younger version of herself in fatigues, standing among a team of soldiers, their faces smeared with dust and sweat, but their eyes burning with purpose. She stared at that photo now, not with nostalgia, but with a heavy reminder of who she was and what she had once been. Every scar beneath her uniform had a story, and every story had a cost. She had joined the military as a teenager, drawn not by glory but by necessity, by the need to fight for something larger than herself. She had been trained in survival, in discipline, in combat that was swift and merciless. She had walked deserts where the sun scorched your skin like fire, and jungles where every shadow hid danger. She had seen brothers in arms fall, and she had carried their weight long after the missions ended. Those years had hardened her, shaped her into someone who could endure storms without flinching. But when she returned home, decorated yet broken, the world she came back to didn't see a hero. It saw just another woman, just another face, just another worker to be discarded in the grind of daily life. That's how she had become a janitor, not because she lacked strength, but because the world lacked vision to see it. And yet in that parking garage, When Victor Crane's hand had closed around her throat, something had awakened, a piece of the soldier that never truly died. Victor, on the other hand, spent his night differently. The pain in his wrist had faded, but the sting of humiliation had not. He had built his empire on fear, on the idea that his money made him untouchable, his influence made him invincible. But that illusion had shattered when a woman in a janitor's uniform dismantled his pride in front of his men. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her calm stare, the way she had twisted free, the way she had left him powerless. It wasn't just an insult. To him, it was war. And Victor Crane was not a man who lost wars. He called his men into his private office, a sleek space at the top of one of his skyscrapers, with glass walls that overlooked the glittering city. His voice was low, dangerous, like a predator licking its wounds. "Find out everything about her," he ordered. "The janitor. I want to know her name, her address, her history. Nobody humiliates me and walks away." His men nodded, but deep down, unease lingered. They had seen something in her, too, something that even Victor's millions couldn't buy. Fearlessness. Still, loyalty to Crane was built on fear, and fear pushed them forward. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her routine, sweeping hallways, cleaning offices, moving unseen like a shadow. But her instincts told her she was being watched. Years in the military had sharpened her awareness beyond ordinary senses. She felt the weight of eyes trailing her, the subtle shifts in the air that most would dismiss. She noticed the same black car parked outside her building 2 nights in a row. The same unfamiliar face lingering too long by the elevators. She knew Victor Crane was reaching into her world, trying to peel back the layers of her life. She should have been afraid, maybe even tempted to run. But instead she felt something else, resolve. If Crane wanted to dig into her past, then he was about to uncover truths that would terrify him more than they terrified her. One evening, as she walked home, the air heavy with the scent of rain, 3 men stepped out from an alleyway to block her path. They wore dark clothes, their shoulders squared with forced confidence. The kind of confidence that came from believing numbers gave them strength. One of them smirked. "Our boss wants to have a little chat." Maya didn't break stride. She walked right between them, her eyes fixed forward, her steps steady. One of them reached out, grabbing her arm. But before his fingers even tightened, her body reacted. She pivoted sharply, twisting his wrist in a way that sent him sprawling to the ground with a howl of pain. The second lunged, but she sidestepped, using his momentum against him, slamming him into the brick wall with a thud. The third hesitated, fear flickering across his face. "Tell your boss," she said, her voice steady, "that he picked the wrong fight." She released the second man, letting him slump against the wall, and walked away without looking back. Rain began to fall, each drop hissing against the pavement like sparks. Behind her, the 3 men groaned, too humiliated to follow. News of the failed attempt reached Victor quickly, and for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, fear. His men weren't weak. They had handled trouble before. But this woman wasn't trouble. She was danger. And danger, Victor realized, couldn't be bought off. Still, his pride wouldn't let him stop. Instead, he doubled down, pouring money into finding every scrap of her history. It wasn't long before he discovered the truth. Her military service, her commendations, her record of missions that were classified, her scars earned in places most men would never dare to step foot in. The file on his desk painted a picture not of a janitor, but of a warrior. And for the first time, Victor understood why her eyes had unnerved him. She had looked at him not like a victim, but like a predator assessing prey. As the days passed, whispers began to spread among Crane's circle. Rumors of the woman who had stood against him, of the soldiers she had once fought beside, of the strength she still carried in her silence. Some began to respect her, others to fear her. Victor's empire built on intimidation was beginning to crack, not because she had destroyed his wealth, but because she had shattered the illusion of his invulnerability. And Maya, she continued her work, not because she had to prove anything, but because her strength had never depended on recognition. She mopped floors, emptied trash cans, gleaned hallways, tasks small in the eyes of the world, but each done with the quiet discipline of someone who had faced greater battles. Yet Maya knew this wasn't over. Men like Victor Crane didn't retreat easily. He would come again, harder this time, more desperate, more reckless. And when he did, she would be ready. For she was not just a janitor. She was a soldier, a survivor, a storm disguised in simplicity. And storms, once awakened, did not rest until the world remembered their power. As the city lights flickered outside her apartment window that night, Maya whispered to herself the words she had once lived by in the battlefield. Stand firm. Hold the line. Fear nothing. And with that she closed her eyes, ready for the war that was coming.